Hej, så kul att ni är med oss. Revival Night 2021, online, men definitivt tillsammans, oavsett vart du är. Runt om hela Skandinavien. Så kul att höra om alla som är med oss. Hej, berätta för oss vart du är. Skriv någonstans, skriv i chatten, messa oss, skriv på sociala medier, berätta vart du är med. Och länkar in och kolla på Revival Night tillsammans med oss. Hej, vi ska gå vidare efter den förmiddagen som vi har haft med 2 stycken fantastiskt bra seminarier. Och vi är otroligt tacksamma för att vi som ledare har så många människor vi kan lära oss av. Vi förstår att ju bättre vi vill bli, ju bättre personer måste vi ha att lära oss av. För min del, en av mina bästa vänner heter Vill, Dooley. Han är pastor i Hillsong, Kapstaden. Han har byggt mycket av ungdomsarbetet i Sydney som har producerat så mycket av alla våra lovsångsledare, våra ledare. Och för jag tror att det är 11-12 år sedan så tog han med sig sin fru, sina barn, flyttade till Sydafrika, ett land som han aldrig hade bott i, inte kände någon i, för att Gud har lagt en längtan på hans hjärta och starta en kyrka där nere. Och vilket har varit en helt fantastisk resa med 10-tusentals människor som en del av den kyrkan. Men för mig så är Phil Dooley en av de brightaste ledarskapsmindsen som finns. Låt dig inte luras av hans coola långa hår. Phil är så sharp. Och jag hade förmånen att få sitta ner med honom och ha ett samtal med honom om ledarskap. Och jag vet att det här kommer välsigna dig på samma sätt som det gjorde mig när jag satt ner med Phil Dooley från Hillsong, Cape Town.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for linking in with us at Revival Nights, which we do every year, bringing all the campuses together. And whoever else who wants to come, it's kind of our startup of the year. And how's January in South Africa?
Well, great to be with you, Andreas. Hi to all the locations there. You know, we love you guys. Obviously, we can't see each other physically or hang out, but great to be on the Zoom with you. January here is probably quite different from January in Sweden. The sun is shining, the sky is blue. Yeah, we're enjoying. You know, the problem is because of COVID, though, the beach is closed, so you can go to the grass, but you can't go onto the beach. So but people are swimming in pools. People are hiking, people are enjoying the sunshine, but it's very different from what you're experiencing now. I think you're telling me it's minus whatever degrees.
Well, the beach is close here as well. More due to snow and ice, so we're kind of in the same spot. There are some crazy people, though. There are some crazy people, making holes in the eyes and go winter. It's a big thing apparently here right now to bathe in ice cold water. Apparently it's good for you.
Yes. I have heard that. Our water gets quite cold, and I still do jump into it when I'm allowed to. But I've never jumped into your kind of cold water. That would be quite the experience. So I don't know whether I would have the guts to do it. The idea of cutting a hole in the ice and jumping in or something, that's bonkers.
Well, I do remember us being somewhere, I can't remember where it was, at wintertime. We were skiing, I think in Austria that time, and we were sitting in the hot tub, and we were rolling in the snow, so you've had a little feel of it.
Yeah, there was that. You know, you do the hot cold therapy or whatever, but that's always good when there's a hot tub there. When there's no hot tub, just the cold therapy, I'm not sure about that one.
I'm with you. How's life in Cape Town? Are you guys in lockdown, or how much can you move around?
Yeah, well, like I say, beaches are closed, but people are still moving around. We are in a lockdown, but cafes are still open, restaurants are still open, but church is closed. Sporting events are closed. I think you can have very small gatherings. I think for a funeral, you can have maybe 50 at a funeral, but otherwise, gatherings are a lot smaller. And we've had a lot of this second wave of COVID. hit us pretty hard, and hitting people that we know now. And I think everyone's probably feeling the same way. Someone knows someone who has either passed away or has had a very bad case. And so, we felt like we were over this, and then it's come back with a vengeance. And so, yeah, it's making life complicated. But I think, like you guys, we're going, okay, what is the win? What are we learning? How do we still move forward in a crazy season like this?
Yeah. Have you, I was reading an article about how COVID has been very unfair when it comes to how it hits that people in lower, more challenging social economic groups has been hit harder, both, when it comes to disease, but also financially and family-wise. Have you noticed any of that in South Africa?
Well, definitely from the perspective of economically, South Africa has a very large, wealth gap. So you have a lot of people who rely on whatever salary they get, no matter how small that might be each week. And when we went into a hard lockdown where a lot of businesses were closed, we were giving out so much food. We still are giving out a lot of food hampers. I think we ended up just, last year prior to coming into this year through COVID, I think we'd actually impacted over 1 million people because the need is so great from an economic perspective, food hampers and all the rest of it. And then as far as the actual, physical challenge, it's hitting everyone right across. So, you're now seeing younger people getting affected by it, where it seemed to initially be older people. We're seeing people, it doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate whether someone's, from a wealthy household, from a poor household, right across. We're seeing all kinds of people hit by it. And so I think physically it doesn't matter who you are, you're aware of it. But I think economically, it's always the most vulnerable who face the biggest challenge. And as a church, we're trying to do our best to help these people and, look after them with the resource that we have. And it's a big challenge, and it's not going to go away even as the pandemic ceases. It's going to be a long process of seeing lives built and rebuilt, and economy growing and things like that.
Yeah. As pastors, we haven't been able to gather the church as we usually do, and not even gather our extended team and leaders. For us, it's closing up on a year. And a lot of times we've had to lead out of different circumstances, from home or from smaller gatherings at the office or different things. How have you found this time for yourself as a leader personally? What have you done to keep your leadership edge? How have you had to change your leadership? What has this year done with you as a leader, as a person?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's one of those seasons, isn't it, where there's highs and there's lows. There's things that you go, oh, I've really enjoyed this. Like, I haven't been flying for about almost 12 months now, and actually my body, I can tell, has appreciated the rest. And you are having more time with your family, which is good. But then because you're having more time together, there tends to be more tension as well. So you kind of have both. You don't have one without the other.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You guys have it. Well, can you help me? Pray for my family.
I'm no help. But
yeah, so you have these mixed elements to it, which I think everyone's feeling. On one hand, they're like, oh man, there's elements of this I'm enjoying, but then there's other elements that are frustrating. Like, you do want to get out, you do want to connect with people, and I think we've all realized the value of community more than ever. But the challenge of how do we do community with certain restrictions and regulations. And that's what we've been working similar to you. We've had to do a lot of our meetings online, and there's a lot of emotion that's attached to that. And so we've just been, I think we've just been trying to do our best for everyone to stay connected, to keep going. You know what? God's still at work. I think that's what we've got to remind ourselves. God's in control. God's still at work, even if it looks different. And what are we learning? Exactly as you say, I've enjoyed the fact that I've been able to, keep reading. I love reading, or, I go on walks around where we live, and I listen to different podcasts. Our dog has loved the fact that we are at home more. Spencer is just living his best life. He's not neglected. There's always someone at home. So, so you try and go, okay, well, I've got this extra time. What am I doing with that? How am I just making a personal decision to keep on growing? And I think, our internal growth and health really matters. I think what's interesting is, we can focus on growth, but are we focusing on health? Because if we just focus on growth, but we neglect health, then it's not going to be sustainable. But if we focus on staying healthy, then over time we will grow. And right now we may not be growing the way we have in the past. Are we adding locations? Well, we can't really even gather in a location, but what can we do to keep ourselves healthy? And I think that involves smaller relational connections and conversations, and just keeping those. And just, I think it's been a time of reflection as well for a lot of people, to go, what really matters? What are the things that matter to me? What are the things that, I was doing because I had to, or we were supposed to, but in a season like this, do they really matter? Because there's a lot of things that we've realized we thought mattered, but they do, but maybe they don't matter as much. And so what are the things that really do matter, and how do we continue to build on them?
Overnight, felt like everything went online, and I was talking to some pastors, and Pastor Gary and a few others, and I think Nicky Gumbel said, possibly someone else, I don't know who's pastoring who these days. Obviously it's a great thing with, you can go on YouTube and you can check out any church and any leader and listen to a multitude of messages, which is great. It's a blessing, but at the end of the day, your favorite preacher in America is not going to come to your funeral, or is not going to help you when you need to talk to something about your marriage or in your health. I think one of the things we learn more than ever is that exactly what you said, community matters, church matters, being planted, having people around you. What have you done with making sure, because I know a lot of people, pastors in church, who watches this, I guess we all feel like we could do more, we could have better quality, we could, there's always someone else to look to where we feel like, man, everybody's doing it so much better. What have you learned? Because one of the things I like about you, Phil, it's a lot of things, not just the fact that you learned to drive in a Volvo. That's one of the great things about you. But
exactly, it's a great start. That's foundational.
You
Learning
can't go
to drive in a Volvo, foundation for success.
If it would have been a Volkswagen, or if it would have been an Opel, which is over here, your life could have gone so much worse.
Exactly.
I think it really matters the fact that you started out in a Volvo.
It's like when, it's like when there was a cult for Jesus, when he rode in to Jerusalem, there was a Volvo for Phil when he was learning to drive. It's like the Lord provided it.
The Volvo 244 GL
that was the one.
What the donkey was to Jesus. Yes. Never underestimate where you come from. I had a question. I completely forgot it. How do you, because one of the things I like about you is you're always been very focused on what's in your hands. You've been building something over time in Cape Town, and you did it for many years in Sydney as well. And I know a lot of guys, they look at the sides and they compare and compete, but you've always felt like someone who's very confident in what God has called you to do and done it your way, which is one of the things I really appreciate and are inspired by your leadership. What have you done to make sure that, okay, here's what we're going to do, here's what we can do, and we're going to do all we can, and we're going to work hard, but we're not going to be stressed about if we can't do it all or can't do it like anybody else. How have you communicated to your team and when it comes to that?
Well, I think you've, it's a great question. And I agree. I think, you can be watching a whole lot of people online, pastors who have, they're gifted communicators. They've got a great setup. And sometimes you can feel like, oh man, I can't compete with that. But I think what we decided was, well, what really matters long-term for us is in this season, we're going to build the lives of people. We believe God's called us to build a church that's going to help build a nation and actually build a continent. Now, how do you do that? Well, ultimately, the resource is people. We have buildings. We're thankful for buildings. But right now, those buildings are of very little use to us. But people are still of, great benefit. It's just highlighted what the essence of the church is, which is not buildings. As much as we love buildings and as much as we, want to maybe build more or establish, I'm all for that. But the essence of the church is people. And, I also did a little bit of study when we're in this lockdown on the underground church. What makes the underground church, the church in places where you can't have gatherings like we could because it's just not legal, or so in China and in the Middle East, and the essence is that these people have a genuinely passionate relationship with Jesus. They're genuinely committed to each other. They're not hierarchical. They're not trying to seek a position. They're trying to care and encourage and support each other and grow in the way Jesus encourages us and desires for all of us to grow. And so we went, okay, if we want to build something, we can keep building people even in a season like this. So we actually have put together a build leadership course. And I think last year we just did it online, and we said right across all our locations, guys, that's just one practical thing. So forget about who you're watching, listening to, hearing on a Sunday. Guys, we're going to gather in smaller groups and we're going to do this build course, and we're going to grow ourselves. Because if we can grow enough great people, then ultimately, as we come out of this lockdown, they're going to be more engaged as leaders. They're going to understand more of what it means to be healthy in regard to serving, loving others, following Jesus. And so we've just decided we're going that way. We forget about what's going on in the rest of the world. Who are we responsible for, and how are we helping them to grow and develop and build and become better leaders? And then the other side of things is, like you mentioned, you may have your favorite preacher, and that's great. But what I've realized is when you preach to a very broad audience, it's hard to deal with specifics. So you can preach on marriage, or you can preach on money, or you can preach on forgiveness, or but it's fairly broad. But more and more, we are seeing people carrying very real emotional pain. And I think COVID has highlighted that. So people with, issues before have now had more time to kind of acknowledge their issue. And so, what we've said as a church is we want to help people find freedom. Now, in order to do that, you actually have to have some resource. So again, we've developed a number of resources, and we've said, and we've had more people take this up than before the lockdown with, hey, if you were ever abused, and right now that's coming up, and you're feeling that, like maybe before you were so busy that you're kind of like, I'm okay, but now you're like, actually, I'm not okay. Well, we've got a course that is helping you from a biblical perspective to find freedom in this. Or maybe your finances are out of order, or maybe your marriage is out of order, or you need help in that, or you're raising kids, or addiction is just something that's got a grip on you in an area. Hey, we actually have resources here to help you to find freedom. And so we've put a lot of effort into that. We're going to continue to put a lot of effort into that, because people are saying, you know, I don't want to just attend. I'm okay, guys.
Are you all right?
It's not
hey,
COVID.
Coughing,
I'm going to be fine.
Very sensitive these
You're
days.
not allowed to cough anymore. I know.
Have you tried to preach on camera and you feel like I just can't cough? And we actually had a camera guy. He's a lovely guy. He's a young guy, camera guy. He had a sneeze, but he was so scared that if he sneezed, that he will get out in the broadcast. He held it in and held it in and held it in until he passed out. He passed out with a camera. It's an awesome guy. I love him so much. He was trying to do his best.
But yeah, and I suppose that's a great analogy. Is I think a lot of people have held things in, and then they have passed out in different ways. And so we're going, well, you know, in this time where people have more time at home, they are connected. Hey, let's get some healing here. Let's help people find freedom. Because it seems to me more and more society is saying, oh, my therapist helped here. My therapist did this. Oh, my therapist, my counselor. And I feel like, I think therapists are great and counselors are great. But imagine if churches were a place that people said, you know what? When I was overwhelmed in this aspect, my church helped me find freedom. Now, there may be a certain aspect of real deep issues that need professional help when it comes to counseling, psychological trauma, and all of that. But I actually think there's a whole lot where our churches could provide the resources where people are saying, oh, I need to go to a secular therapist, or I need to go here or there. Actually, wow, we've created a church community and environment. And in this season, which has been tough, I've actually found a greater freedom than I've ever had. So we're working on that. I'm not saying we're experts on it, but it's just areas where we've gone, what are the things that we can really focus on that can really see people come out of this hopefully stronger than they were when they went into it.
Yeah. And I think one of the great things that we've learned in this season is we haven't been able to gather all the leaders in a room, or not even campus teams in a room. I feel like we've had an opportunity to learn how to be the body of Christ in a way that we kind of didn't have the time to do before. And I feel like this has been a good season where we've actually been able to grow up leaders and validate leaders for the ministry of the Lord, for the work of the Lord. I've been reading Acts quite a bit this last year, and just reading about the first church, and reading about how they got spread out, chased out of Jerusalem, and the first kind of spread of the gospel happened, and reading through Paul's letters and see how focused he was on putting people into practice, elevating people up and say, hey, you have now been saved for a week. Now you can lead, and you can do this. You can contribute. You can do this. And I think out of all the challenges last year has brought us, I think that's just in the way I look at leadership, the way we've tried to alter things. I think the need of the body to take care of the body has been elevated and given more attention.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times we build programs to fix things, and I think programs are great. But if I have a cut on my arm, it's what's healthy around it that's going to heal it up. And a lot of times when something in the body breaks, we're looking for a program, we're looking for something else to come and fix it. But it's actually a lot of times it's the healthy things around it that heals it and closes the wound. Yeah. And I think it's one of the great things that we can, in this time when we can't meet, that we could work on, and where we can help the church, and we can help people to understand that you are good enough to do the ministry of Jesus. You are good enough to care about people. You are good enough to lead your friends. And you are good enough to start a little Bible reading plan with your buddies, or whatever it is, And I think that's been powerful.
Yeah, I would just add to that you just need to show real love and care and genuine kindness, and that you don't have to have a preaching gift or a amazing platform charisma to do that. I think more and more through this season, people are looking for real, they're looking for genuine, they're looking for authentic, they're looking for people they can trust. all of those things. And that comes from how you relate to someone one-on-one. Not just how good you are at preaching and crafting a message, but are you genuinely caring and concerned? And so, that can be anyone. And, some of the greatest pastors are, not the ones on the platform, the people who are just caring for those around them and in their community and getting on a Zoom link and saying, hey guys, how you going? And, gathering if you can in a smaller setting for a coffee and just really just, hey, what's going on? Where you're at? How you going? How can I help? And that commitment to the body, like you say, that is really healthy. And I think we've felt the same. There's kind of this slowing down in order to connect, and people want that. And we love we love gathering for worship. I think it's always going to be part of who we are, no doubt, as a church. But I think on the other side of that, this connection to each other and taking time to really go, well, we are the body of Christ, and we are committed to each other. And it's like the early church was completely unselfish. As I've studied the underground church, it's unselfish. It's not what do I get out of it, it's what do I give into it. And I think sadly, because of this consumer-driven world that we live in, often even our mentality with church is what am I getting out of it, rather than what can I give into it. And if we have that perspective, it's a healthy perspective, and we actually receive more when we have that attitude. So we're trying to work through all of this.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, especially what you talked about in the end there, where the mentality, whether you come to receive or you come to give. I think if you come to give, you'll get both. And as a pastor, the question you don't want is who's preaching on Sunday, whether that will dictate whether you come or not, or and I think our understanding of real community has really been elevated. And I 100% agree with you with the early church. And when you read about how they gathered, how they shared everything among them, made sure that no one was hungry, no one was left out. And I think it's something beautiful about the body of Christ looking after the body of Christ. A lot of us, we live in societies that are very state-driven. We especially up here in Sweden, we're state-driven. If there's a problem, the state should fix it. If there's a challenge, the state should fix it. If Volvo is about to go bankrupt, the state should fix it. And sometimes I think we bring that mentality into life and church. If there's a problem, let's call the office. Or if there's a problem, let's call a leader. I think the kingdom of God and the body of Christ is so much different, where if I see it, it's probably because God allowed me to see it, so I can help solve it and I can help minister to it. And, I think that's beautiful. I think that's one thing that we really need to take away from this season when we open up the buildings again and do all that. And hey, Phil, one of the things that has been great with the last year has been just a highlighting of injustice, and when it comes to ethnicity and segregation and racism. I know South Africa, I've been there, has a history of a lot of challenges, more than possibly many other nations. And I know you've always been very committed to raising up a generation, multicultural, multi-background, raising up next generation leaders. How have this last year, with everything that has been brought to surface for very good reason, how have that has it changed the way you lead? What were you doing before? What are you doing to raise up a generation where a young person from a minority or from someone that has been brought up with racism could see themselves in the future in the church and in leadership and in whatever future they want?
Yeah, look, it's a big question. It's a huge topic. It's obviously a very emotional topic as well. Not growing up in South Africa, having come from Australia 12 years ago and building church here, there is still so much that I'm learning, that Lucinda's learning about this beautiful country, and how to build church here, because you have a racially diverse country. You have a lot of pain from apartheid, from injustice of the past. There's still healing that is needed and necessary, and to some extent is taking place. And obviously we've seen, particularly midway through last year, a very, very much a vocalizing of the pain, particularly, you know, people who feel like they have been, you know, treated poorly, that, you know, they have been underprivileged and others have been privileged. And so I think it definitely over this last year has made me more aware of my privilege, that, you know, as a white person, I came from a great family in Australia. I had lots of opportunity, but you take it for granted. And then coming to a country like South Africa and recognizing, my goodness, there are really gifted, talented people who just don't have opportunity. They have potential, but they don't have opportunity. And part of the issue is, you know, the systemic challenge of racism and the legacy of apartheid that you now have, even though South Africa, you know, anyone can vote. It's, you know, it's a free and democratic country. There are still massive economic disparities and challenges in regard to, you know, who holds economic power and who holds political power, and the racial tension that rises from that. And as a church, we want to be representative of the country. We want to be representative of the continent. And so that means, you know, raising up a diverse group of amazing leaders. And I think we've had to look at how we're doing that. Are we giving opportunity to some who've been previously disadvantaged? Because sometimes they're there, but they just don't have the opportunity. They don't have the ability to do an internship, for example. Because they don't have parents who have the financial resource to enable them to do that. And that doesn't mean they're not capable. It's just sometimes there are things that I take for granted and think, oh, anyone could do an internship. But hey, actually, no, if you live in a township in South Africa and, you know, your parents who are amazing people, but because of the legacy of apartheid have not been able to generate enough wealth to give you you know, opportunity. So what do we as the church do about that? How do we find these amazing young men and women and, you know, give them opportunity so that it can be a level playing field? And you know, that's we're learning that, we're developing that, but I'm excited about it. We also put together a course called The Brave Journey, where we looked at the history of racism. We looked at it from a biblical perspective. Our whole staff, our whole team went through that. It was uncomfortable conversations. That's why we called it A Brave Journey. It was about 7 or 8 weeks where they would meet and then break down into smaller groups. And we had facilitators, and we'd read through, you know, material on things like, well, what does white supremacy mean? What is, you know, what are these issues that we're hearing talked about? What is systemic racism? Am I a part of that? Is my thinking somehow limiting me from seeing the potential in someone else? And I don't even know it. So to me, there's a difference between ignorance and indifference. Some people are ignorant. They literally just have never been exposed to certain understanding when it comes to you know, the racial systematic racism and things like that. And I know for me, I had to have greater education on this. So there's ignorance, and then there's indifference. Indifference is when I don't care. I see it, I know it's there, but I don't care, or it's too painful for me to acknowledge, or I'm not prepared to. And so I think it's okay for a season for people to be ignorant, as long as they're learning and being educated and asking questions. And I think like you, like all of us have gone, okay, hang on, let me ask some questions, particularly of someone who's Black, but, you know, someone who's grown up in a minority, or, you know, grown up in an underprivileged world. What does it feel like? What does it look like? And that's been really helpful, really eye-opening. I'm also excited about the fact that we're launching Hillsong College Africa, which to me is going to give a huge opportunity for the next generation of young African leaders to be developed within the church. And again, the opportunity there is saying, well, we understand that practically to get to somewhere like Australia to study is really hard. It can, the financial barrier, the visa barrier, all of those things where we assume anyone could go. But as you look deeper, you realize actually it's kind of hard for people from a lot of parts of the world to get there. And so this is another step towards going, well, rather than have this expectation, this barrier, this hurdle, let's remove that. And so we're starting this journey of establishing college for, anyone can come, but it's a Raising Up African Leaders college. And I think in the years to come, we're going to see incredible fruit from that. So it's a journey. All of these things, Andreas, there's no quick fix. And I think people want immediate answers, change, but change takes time if it's healthy. And I'm excited about the next 5, 10 years, 15 years of Hillsong Africa. I think we're going to see the most incredible young African leaders come through, develop and grow and have an impact over the world. So I've talked a long time about this.
No, it's great.
You can tell
I appreciate it.
It's something that's, really we carry the burden of it.
And it's not a quick conversation, and it's deserving of its time, and we'll have it in other areas of this revival nights. And I agree with you. I think this last year definitely has been an eye opener in many areas where people like myself has had to go from being ignorant in areas to starting to learn. It's always a challenge when you have to lead while you learn, but I think that's a burden and responsibility that we as leaders have, and that I have. And I think just looking at the fact that we're looking for the next generation in a place where we're looking, and learning that there's places we're not looking, where there's gifted, talented people who are just not having the same opportunity of showing themselves so they can get picked. And I think that's the thing that I've been committed to. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, and I'm sure the guys there in Hillsong Sweden know this, but just be reminded, you have so much at your disposal that you often don't realize. We're so good at looking at what we don't have and seeing, the challenge before us. But now, having lived on the continent of Africa, there is so much that you have at your disposal that others simply don't have. And I just encourage people, when I go back to Australia, hey, just don't take for granted and don't waste what you've been given, and then consider how you can use that in some way to lift the lives of others in places where they have the potential, but they need the opportunity. And so we see that as a huge part of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Well, it's great, Phil. Hey, one last question. What's the thing you're looking forward to the most in 2021, and not counting coming up here and skiing in Sweden next year?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. No, the meatballs. That's the other thing. I was talking to my son. I was talking to my son, Zach, and going, remember those meatballs in Stockholm? And we're like, yeah, they're good. Especially when it's cold. I feel like it needs to be cold to have the meatballs. So you guys, Swedes, you have the best bowls in the world. There, I've said it. But let's continue before we get ourselves in trouble. Look, I think I don't know if it's one thing. I think I'm genuinely excited about what we're doing when it comes to raising up young leaders. That's just something I get excited about, is seeing the progress in those who are, you know, growing and developing and carrying responsibility, and seeing them become better at what God's called them to. I love that. I just love seeing people succeed. I love seeing people, you know, achieve things. And so, you know, I feel like my role is becoming more and more like a coach. And, you know, we have some amazing, you know, men and women in the, I don't know whether you call it the secular world, corporate world, whatever, who are achieving great things. And I just want to cheer them on and celebrate them. And then within our church team, we have these amazing leaders who are growing and developing and learning. And I'm just excited about them and seeing the progress that they make. And so that to me is what it's all about. You know, if we can keep just building people's lives, seeing their lives progress, you know, we're going to, you know, the fruit's going to be there, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be powerful. And, you know, whether that fruit looks like buildings in the future, I'm sure there'll be some amazing buildings and space and whatever, and other things and songs and, you know, businesses built and young people, you know, changed. I just love all of it. So, you know, I know we're kind of in this lockdown season, but I just love seeing people's lives build. I just, yeah, that's what gets me.
Awesome. Well, Phil, we appreciate you. You're a great leader, blessing to me and to so many others, and to our church globally. Thanks for taking the time to speaking to everyone at Revival Nights. Trying to get you up here maybe next year or the year after, be here live. Have a good time. Yes. Enjoy the sun. Yes. I'm so sorry you can't live in this slush that we have here. I know you would if you could, but hey, we love you.
If I was in a Volvo, I'd be fine.
Yeah. Well, sorry, say that again.
If I was in a Volvo, I'd be fine, even in the slush.
Hey, we'll get you a Volvo. Hey, where I come from, they still drive those Volvo 240s. You know, like they haven't progressed, so we'll get you one. Put some nice stickers on and yeah.
What a dream.
Well, say hi to your family.
Bless you, man.
Let's talk soon.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay, cheers,
Bye.
buddy. Bye.